Good morning, good morning, good morning as we enter into the premium slot of the conference. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I am Valencia Macklin-Topping. I am the General Manager for our public sector cloud business within Regulated Industries in our cloud and AI business. Joining me on stage is Miriam Burhane Russum, who leads Copilot and AI solutions within my public sector team. And today we're going to talk a bit about AI with sovereign controls. Some of you may have been in the session that Robert and I just completed on partner engagement as you lean into the sovereign and digital adoption solution story that we've established with our Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty solutions. Earlier this week, you may have had the opportunity to participate in a theater session in Theater C, where Kevin Rubin walked through our regulated environment management solution. That is the next generation of what we've done with Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty. Yesterday morning, Robert did a deep dive in how to deploy Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty and our RIM capabilities, which allows you an alternative for on-prem solutions in terms of moving customers to the hyperscale cloud. I encourage you, if you didn't get a chance to participate in those sessions, to take a look at the recordings online. They will go in a bit more depth than we will today in terms of the sovereign solution capabilities. But here we want to demonstrate some early successes that we're having with AI, with sovereign controls, with moving to the hyperscale cloud being that first step. And hopefully I have a new remote. So again, we'll talk about AI with sovereign controls, how we look at that. And then we're going to actually give you some demos today. Again, it's the last session. We want to make sure you stay invigorated, so you'll get a walkthrough of a couple of demos that we've been able to demonstrate with customers and partners for AI for citizen services, information assistant, and some other things, and then talk about what's next. So AI transformation, for those of you that were in the prior session, one of the things that's been pushing this adoption of, hey, how can I move to the hyperscale cloud for public sector in spaces where we didn't necessarily think about it before, is the desire for additional transformation of government agencies and public sector and ease of access to citizen services. To leverage the power of AI, you need to be on the hyperscale cloud. And so that's part of our sovereign solution story. But what's fueling it is this desire to be more agile and flexible. I've talked about advanced cybersecurity. How do we foster innovation? And again, access. And I often say that we don't like to do technology for technology's sake. It is really what is driving impact. And in this case, in public sector, what is driving impact for highly regulated industries to be able to move faster and secure data and be compliant. What customers are asking for is, in some of the same themes that we've talked about this week as we've looked at sovereignty, how can we enforce data residency to ensure data stays in region? How can we enforce securing sensitive data? And we've talked about how with our sovereign solution Spectrum, the one that's based on the hyperscale cloud, can attach and address about 70 to 80% of your workloads. How do we enforce policies that are compliant with local regulations, with compliance, with regional regulations as well? Operator transparency. How do we make sure that cloud operators don't have access to the data unnecessarily, and that for some reason there is access, that is protected? And then how do we take advantage of AI innovation? Those are the questions we hear asked. Our software-based sovereignty solution, which guides our work, is that customers own their data. You control who accesses it. It is managed based on local laws, policies, and regulations. And that cloud operator logs are highly transparent and available to you. And again, if you take a look at that REM recording, you will actually see some samples of the transparency logs that we prepare and the level of detail that's provided for customers if for any reason there's any access that's made. Since we've been live with our Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty solution since December of 2023, and Robert can probably quote the number, but there's been, the logs are actually empty in most cases because that's how infrequent data has been accessed. I think there's maybe one. So when we're, this is a build-up slide, which I'm just going to build. It's a little smaller here. But what we look to do is you have that Azure hyperscale cloud as the foundation with all of the tools and capabilities and security that comes with Azure. We leverage you migrate your customer workloads and data, so that's your customer workloads, your data, or as a partner, what you're doing for your customers. And then we build AI-enabled solutions, leveraging Azure AI built on OpenAI. You can see here the GPT-4o as a way to deliver these capabilities that you're going to see demonstrated today. I'm going to reiterate this. I know this is a question that has come up in multiple sessions. We are built on trust. Your data is your data. It is not used to train or enrich AI models. Your AI models and data are protected, and our customer copyright is our commitment. These are our responsible AI principles, which are also public. They go through a bit lower level of detail as well in terms of what's stated publicly. But the key here is that particularly as partners, as customers, you can demonstrate this assurance that this is how we're leaning into this AI space. And it shows in these capabilities that Miriam will be demonstrating in just a moment. We do have some sample use cases. So for what you'll see today, we have delivered AI solutions that enable government workers. So the southern part of Australia uses it for their education system. I want to say in Albania, some of the capabilities you'll see today are front-facing for citizen services in Albania. And there's a few others that have been implemented where they've been tailored for tax services, for customs. So the models that you will see today are actually in use and have been able to be leveraged because of the movement to the hyperscale cloud and a quick adoption of some AI capabilities. They are, again, if you look at the RAG framework from an AI perspective, app user interface, the orchestration is there, Azure AI for search, and then Azure OpenAI for the prompts and response, all built on your data services. And I wanted to get through this quickly because the fun part is going to be Miriam walking through the demos. When we talk about framing it for public sector, sovereignty, accuracy, complexity are things that we are looking at. How do we frame that for you to quickly adopt some models that advance transformation or advance citizen services? And with that, I think next up is the fun part. Miriam's going to walk us through some demos, and we'll leave a bit of time for some questions as well at the end. Miriam?
Thanks, Valicia. So as Valicia mentioned, next I will be walking you through a set of capabilities that we have today with this framing in mind: sovereignty, accuracy, especially for AI responses, and complexity, also reducing complexity. First, we have made Information Assistant available, which is available for you to use. It's an AI agent that's built on a RAG pattern to get public sector organizations build their own AI agents, leveraging Azure OpenAI. With Information Assistant, you can implement typical use cases that allows you to chat with your own private data. So referring back to the use cases, you can use it for a variety of scenarios, whether it's for enhancing citizen services or enabling government workers, case workers' processes, for example. However, I want to highlight some key features, 3 key features when it comes to accuracy, improving accuracy, security, as well as sovereignty. I'll walk through each of those. When it comes to accuracy, often we hear from public sector customers, but it's also true for other customers as well, accuracy of responses from this AI model, LLM-driven, is very important to them. And typically what we see is that you almost require data science type of skills to be able to improve the accuracy at various stages of the pipeline. If you're doing document chunking, depending on the type of documents that you're using different search indexing techniques. So what we've done with Information Assistant is actually spending a lot of hours to implement different document strategies so you can use it from the get start and you get more accurate responses. It also includes some controls that allows you to have the responses to be more precise or creative, depending on the use cases, however you want to restrict it. But also allows you to set up different persona and roles. So for example, answers that are given to a fifth grader should be different, for example, the answers that are provided to an analyst. Obviously, as we've seen, it's from the pattern of all this LLM-driven application, it will provide you the sources, references, as well as the thought process behind the agent's reasoning. When it comes to security, which is super important, often organizations, they will start the pilot without building any of the security foundation that protects their data, and then they have to do a lot of work to actually be able to protect their data and workloads with different techniques. So Information Assistant has a secure mode setting that allows you to configure it and actually deploy this agent from the get-go with some encryption and networking control. So disabling public networks or setting up virtual network so you can deploy the workloads within your own private networks. Allowing all the services to talk through private endpoints, but also data encryption, both at rest and in transit. So this throughout all the Azure services that are supporting that RAG pattern. Obviously, this is streamlining for you many hundreds of hours of work, and you can get it right away when you even start with the pilot. Third, when it comes to sovereignty, which Valicia walked us, how we think about sovereignty. If you have different regulatory requirements and you need to enable those requirements, configure them as part of your environment in infrastructure, you will use, with Cloud for Sovereignty, we have a set of capabilities that allow you to do that. Namely the sovereign landing zones, as well as policy packs and enhanced transparency. The cool thing is you can take Information Assistant in secure mode and actually deploy it within a sovereign landing zone. So the combination of both allows you to protect this workload, AI workload, with the specific policies that you will have set with that sovereign landing zone. For those who are not familiar on sovereign landing zone, I'll just break it a little bit for you. So what you see here in the picture is the sovereign landing zone. Robert went through that in his talk yesterday, so you can also watch that recording. But to make it brief, the sovereign landing zone is a set of management groups in Azure. It's a hierarchy that allows you to configure specific policies for each of this management group. What you see to the left, hopefully that's the left, the platform group, management group, allows you to define your identities and subscriptions, as well as your connectivity that are all shared services for your rest of the workloads. And then in the middle, you see the landing zones, where you deploy the workloads. The landing zones have already a predefined set of policies according to the nature of the workloads that you're going to deploy. Obviously, you can configure that even more. But in general, we have the confidential landing zone groups, and non-confidential landing zone groups according to the data. And with this structure, you can deploy the Information Assistant, all the services within the landing zone. Right now, we have it within online landing zone. We will support corp landing zones, as well as the rest of the Azure services, Azure AI services, bring confidential inferencing will be able to support that within the confidential landing zone. Now, actually, let me maybe show you a little bit in action through some quick demos on how that looks like. How many of you are familiar with the sovereign landing zones? Okay, good. I mean, so many of you. Okay, that's perfect. So you're already familiar. For those of you who are not familiar, sovereign landing zones, it's available on GitHub. So it's infrastructure as a code. It sets up all the infrastructure of what we've seen in the picture. What I have here is my sovereign landing zone, where I have configured all my parameters that I need in specific policies. One of the ones that I want to highlight here, for those of you, for example, that are interested in data residency, you can set that up to really restrict the regions where you want to deploy the workloads. In my case, in this case, I have East US region, but obviously you could choose from all the supported Azure regions. What this will do when it's deployed, it will actually restrict all the workloads to be within that specific region that you have defined. So you're defining it by design. Once you deploy this, I will not deploy it because it's going to take some time. Not quite a lot of time, but not enough time here in our session. You will see that it deploys this management group hierarchy in your Azure portal. In your tenant. So you can see all these landing zones here in the platform management groups. In this case, in my online landing zone, I have a couple of subscriptions set up that are subjected to be in the East US region, where I'm going to deploy the information assistant. Moving on, for information assistant, again, that's also code that we make available in GitHub with all the security features. One of the parameters you can set up here is to enable secure mode. Here's a setting. It's as simple as that. When you turn on this to be true, it will deploy all the security measures that I've showed you earlier, encryption, as well as networking controls from the get-go. Again, I'm also not going to deploy this right now, but it will take less than an hour to deploy, so which is pretty much streamlined for a service that has all the security measures. Once you deploy it, in my case, it's deployed within my landing zone here. If I look at my resources, this is where it's deployed with all the security measures. You could look at all the services that make up Information Assistant Agent and all the security controls that are available. It comes with an easy-to-use interface from once you deploy it, where you can actually add documents and start interacting with the agent to try to really get the value out of the business use cases that you're looking for. And then you can further customize it really to fit your need. OK, moving on. So to get started, you can get started today with all these features that I've shown you. As I mentioned, it's all available under MIT license in GitHub, so you can use it as is. The code base, there's plenty of documentation in the code base that will walk you through what each of the services are, the architecture, the secure mode architecture, and all of that. You can simply change parameters and add your parameters to just deploy it. And then it also has a cost calculator, so you can see upfront how much the services could cost you. You can find it at aka.ms.info/info-assist, all these resources.
And if I may add, what we have seen some customers do and some agencies do is tailor it for the sector. So there are some partners that have created an education assistant if they were doing something for education department. I mentioned tax and customs earlier, so they can be tailored based on the citizen engagement of information that's requested. And what we've made available here is something that is already built into the sovereign landing zone that has those controls that allows customers and partners to very quickly start to experiment and do some engagement with AI and with agents.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I'm just curious, how many of you are already experimenting or using AI, and we call this a pro-code way of doing it, which means you're really interacting and working at the platform level, the services, and also accessing the code. So I'm just curious how many of you are already on this journey.
Okay, so a couple.
Do you mind, because I have a few minutes, so do you mind kind of telling the audience what you're using AI for now?
Okay.
We don't really use the Azure Cloud Platform for that, so probably not the best person to talk to you, but we have our own controls that we built, which are similar to what you just showed,
Okay.
in a multi-cloud hybrid,
Okay.
not like locked into the Microsoft ecosystem.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So for folks in the back of the room, what he indicated is that they have started to experiment in a pro-code way for travel, I believe I heard you say.
Data sovereign.
For data sovereign for solutions in a multi-cloud agnostic environment. And then I think we saw another hand up of doing
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same case because I'm from IAEA. So we have state commitments and non-state commitments, but we have our own platform internally.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing those. So I'm also curious, for those of you who have not started, what's been the barrier or the challenge for not starting on an AI journey, on using AI for your cases? If you want to share.
I mean, I can speak to what we've seen on our end. We're also pretty unique. Cost is a really big issue.
Cost.
A lot of massive companies, and we've been around as long as we have as much data as we have, moving data around in an efficient way is fairly difficult. We have a rather large data lake, for example, so it gets rather complex when you're, using cloud platform specific services, right?
Right.
Interacting with that.
And so again, for the folks in the back, what he indicated was some of the two key challenges they've seen to starting their AI journey is cost, the cost implication of starting that journey, and then also because of the volume of their data, being a large organization and the size of their data lake, just the challenges of even considering moving data around has been a hindrance in areas of starting a cloud journey. If I translate it, your answer correctly.
It gets really complex depending on what industry you're in.
Yeah.
So there are different rules. If you have to stick to PCI, requirements, for example, or if you're global like we are, where you now need to honor GDPR.
Right.
Then local rules.
Right.
within the European Union. And then now in the U.S. with California
Right.
instituting their own privacy laws, you now have state-specific rules you have to follow.
Right.
Complicated,
Yeah.
really fast.
The compliance factor, right, which is why the solutions that we're talking through, and that's why you heard that overlay with sovereign landing zones, is to start to account for the complexity of the compliance and regulatory environment, and how can we make that transformation easier.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's good to hear. Thanks for sharing. What we've shown, right, so far is what we call a pro-code way of doing. Obviously, it allows you, with the information assistant, we're streamlining, and the combination of sovereign landing zones, we're streamlining a number of those complexity for you. However, yes, our customers will still have to have this developer skills, or sometimes maybe data science skills, and that's fine. There are good use cases for being able to have access to the low-level platform services as well as all the code. But at the same time, we also hear from customers, public sector organizations that don't really have large developer skills or data science skills, and they are looking for ways to get started on using AI with almost no code or low code. At the same time, there are some use cases or some applications of AI where, like, for example, with all the investments that some of the public sector organizations have made in making their data available and accessible, there are various open data initiatives, for example. So even like citizens, developers can take the data and develop different type of applications. So there are areas where it's also ripe for the the use of AI, especially in enhancing citizen services type of scenario. And probably throughout the conference, you've heard also a lot that at Microsoft, we're making it even much more simple to build agents. Some of the vision that we're hearing, you've heard from Satya, building agents is going to be as simple as creating PowerPoint documents and Word documents. I guess maybe 20 years was very complex to do. Even like Word documents probably needed a programming language behind it. Now everyone can click a Word document and start just being productive with it. So there's that type of vision. So you've heard agents and being able to, and we have this platform that's also called Copilot Studio, which is for building agents in a low-code way. I don't know how many of you have been in those sessions and you've heard about Copilot Studio and building agents in an easy way? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. A few of you. Okay, that's good. So Copilot Studio is a SaaS platform. You can build agents very quickly and in a very easy way. So you can start adding actions, topics, add data sources, and with just a few minutes, you will have an agent up and running that's going to be able to improve certain workflow from a specific process that you're trying to improve. And actually, let me hop into Copilot Studio and walk you through a quick demo. Okay, so what you're seeing is Copilot Studio, and which provides you an easy way to create agents, as I mentioned. It comes with an agent gallery that it's pretty much pre-configured agent templates that you can get started with. And today, as part of our public sector AI capabilities, we're excited to announce that we have built and made available a citizen services agent that you can use it to get started right from Copilot Studio in a low-code or no-code way. So I'll just show you what this looks like. Pretty much, when you start to build an agent from the citizen services agent, you will get in a page that's pre-configured with some knowledge sources as well as some example topics. Pretty much, it's as easy as providing a description, providing instructions and orchestration to what the agent is supposed to do and how you want the agent to behave. You can add your knowledge sources for your specific public sector organization. This could be your website that you already send citizens to take a look at the data. You can use the topics pretty much to craft specific paths for how you want users to interact with it. You can, in addition to adding knowledge sources, to power chat and Q&A-like experiences, you can easily also integrate it with APIs and other connectors. So for example, if you have data in a data lake, in Fabric, or from any other solution, you can build connectors that can connect to this agent, and the agent will be able to get the right amount, the right source for the data, depending on the question that's being asked. So we have a number of different topics that you can take a look, and then you can further configure it. On your right here, you see how the agent, you can test how the agent would act. So for example, with the example that we have here, you can do things like summarize, for example, for a typical citizen services scenario, summarize cities' community plans, but it could be any other information as well. And it would pull from the website or the knowledge source and provide a summarized answer. All of this, you're able to do it with pretty much configuration with almost no code. You can also connect through APIs to bring live type of information. So in this case, in my example, it shows all the road closures that are in Redmond. So it's a pretty powerful way of integrating different data sources, whether it's websites as well as APIs. And you can also integrate, for example, forms. So if you're expecting a citizen to fill up a certain form, you can integrate it right in this flow. So we have examples for it. Once you're done with this, you can publish it in specific channels. So for example, if this has to be part of a public sector organization, a city's website agent, for example, like a chatbot, that's pretty much an implementation various public sector organizations have done. You can simply publish it in a preferred channel and then have your end user, in this case for the citizen services would be a citizen, start interacting with the agent with the data sources that you have configured. With that, this is available. So the link where to find this is aka.ms/citizenservices/-agent-learn. You can get started today. It's in preview. We'd love to hear your feedback as well. When it comes to sovereignty controls on this, we have also published guidance on how to think about sovereign controls when it comes to this low-code type of platforms that we have, like the Power Platform, which really powers this Copilot Studio. I hope you've learned new things today that you'll be available, that you'll be able to use. Obviously, we are in the midst of the AI transformation. So AI, we know that AI is transforming every industry, every role. And then we're also in the AI agents era. Agents will be able to take up more of the improvement on the workflows and processes beyond just large language models. So you can get started today. If Valicia, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I would just, particularly for those that did the bookend of the sessions, or you've heard us refer to these other sessions, if you think about regulated environment management, which supports public sector and heavily regulated industries to quickly transform and transition to the hyperscale cloud. For about 80% of those workloads that still provide a sense of security around data residency, a sense of security around operator transparency, the ability to leverage cybersecurity signals and be more resilient from a disaster recovery and business continuity perspective, and now move up the stack on the other end as we close out our session with this session today on, now that we've made that movement, how can we truly transform how our organizations are operating? How can we get citizen services faster? And so what you saw Miriam demonstrate between the information assistant, which is a pro code application, set of applications, and citizen services, which we're leveraging Copilot Studio in a low-code way, is to now start to leverage AI to truly advance how we support the public sector. So that's all we have by way of material. We did leave a few moments for questions, but hope that you have found this other end of the journey a valuable experience, and we definitely welcome your feedback as we all continue this journey together. So thank you very much. So we do have a mic if there's any questions. If not, that's okay too. We know that we're the last part between you and probably getting home. So, yes.
You want to come?
So I actually had a chance already to play around with it a bit. One of the things that I had noticed, and I was just curious if you were going to add support for it, but that is PII data obfuscation for not just what is exposed to the end user in the chat, but also obfuscation in Purview itself, so
Purview,
administrators can't see things like social security numbers coming
Right.
out of like the Workday connector.
Right.
Right.
Because that's currently a gap.
Yes,
And,
yes.
Right.
you know,
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. So we do have, as part of the Azure AI tool chain, there are certain tools that allows you actually to do PII obfuscation or whatever sensitive data you might refer to. So that's something that we're looking at and looking to integrate it as part of the agent that we already have. But there are already capability available to be able to do that.
And then my final question, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
is around how you're able to provide the usage, analytics for artificial intelligence, specifically around the chat,
Yes.
while at the same time honoring the other side of the coin, which is, for example, Microsoft made a promise to enterprises that use Copilot Chat to to make sure that the transcripts as well as conversation data ends. So how can we?
How are both of those promises fulfilled? Right.
They conflict with each other.
Right.
Yeah. So when it comes in the ProCode solution, leveraging all the Azure OpenAI and all that, obviously you're controlling directly how those what you're implementing behind, right? So you can choose not to save any of the chat or any of the sensitive information. However, even if you do so, it's confined within your services, the platform PaaS services. You can encrypt it, and Microsoft will not have access to any of your users' chat data or history, and it doesn't get used also for training any of the models. From a low-code platform perspective, obviously, it's a SaaS platform, so you do have less access to the underlying platform services, and there's less configurability in terms of what you can set or not. But even with that, data is isolated, can be isolated. Actually, there are specific settings to isolate it in your own tenant. And then again, also for that, it's managed by Microsoft, but Microsoft won't have access to any of your data. So the right encryptions will be in place, even for the SaaS platform, for the low-code platform.
It would be nice to have Microsoft have like an official document similar to what they did for Copilot Chat that kind of explicitly says what you just stated.
Very good. That's great feedback. Yeah, that's great feedback.
We do have statements, documentations, actually, when it comes to privacy and security, especially privacy of data. So maybe we can connect later, and I can also send you some of this documentation and learn.
Okay, next.
Do you know if SLZ is available in GCC High?
So SLZ is is separate from GCC High. We actually had a conversation. We had, after our session yesterday, some folks were like, oh, I got pushed to GCC High. Can I do this now? Right, so, so that opportunity does exist. What I would say is let's, and I think, oh, Robert's in the back. Touch base with Robert, and we can start to talk about how that segregation can start to work.
Is it available in GCC?
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Great question, though. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, maybe. No, can do it without Mike.
Yeah. You actually can.
Inval's code is great. We are using it also for deploying our platforms. But the next challenge is keeping up to date.
Yes. Yes.
You're changing policy.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a capability that's coming, and you've heard me mention REM, or Regulated Environment Management, and Kevin's recording talked through what's coming and what exists in terms of versioning, right? Because the policies and the regulations are going to have some versioning going on, but then also there's a capability that is in private preview now, so you can sign up for preview, and it will be made available in Q1, is what we call drift analysis. So once you lay out what those policies are and you have the version controls over those policies, and let's say you deploy, here's my ideal landing zone, we will have the capability where you can also do that drift analysis to see how far things move over time from what that baseline is, particularly as the policies start to get updated. So we have some of that exists today. We have more of it that is in preview that will then be in Q1 in terms of being released into the GA product.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yes.
I want to use this mic because so I'm not sure about the difference between the sovereign landing zone and normal landing zone. So when to use the sovereign landing zone, and so when I should use the normal landing zone.
Yeah. So that's a good question. We get asked that question a lot. So there's the Azure landing zone, right, which is the best practice on how you're going to configure your environment in Azure. Sovereign landing zone, it's based on that. It's a variant. And has specific policy. It's very focused on what we define sovereignty concerns. So around data residency, other type of policy,
Compliance,
nabbing,
yeah.
encryption.
Okay.
And regional laws and compliance, right? So whether you're talking bio in the Netherlands or some others, so it has that ability to add those additional controls. And we have Robert here as well, who can go into some more of those technical details. But if you're on one, you can still leverage SLZ, right? So, but the choice in terms of when do I deploy an ALZ and when am I deploying leveraging SLZ, a lot is based on the customer set and the partners and what level of regulatory controls that customer set is kind of dependent on. So financial sector, healthcare, some things that we see for government agencies, a lot of them want to be able to see that we have, it gives you an easier way to implement, those hundreds of policies and controls that can then get translated into technology.
Okay. Yes, actually, I might. Yeah.
Right. To choose one or the other.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
SLZ is fully compatible with ALZ. It's actually the version of ALZ. So if you already use the ALZ and you have your own ALZ configuration, take the SLZ policies available in Azure.
Okay. Oh, just apply
Yeah.
additionally. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we got 50 seconds counting. Well, thank you so much again, and hope you've had a valuable week here at Ignite and safe travels back home. Thank you.
Thank you so much.